So today we're going to talk about working in Photoshop to clean up some of our letters we created from typography class. I'm going to drag my letter, well actually this is Jeffrey's letter, I'm going to drag it to the Photoshop icon in the dock. Now if you don't have that in the dock because the network is not working, you go to the Applications folder, find the Photoshop folder, which is PS. And when you open that Photoshop folder, then you can click on that Photoshop icon and it'll open the software. And it will show the software being open down here in the dock. Okay, so there's a lot not working out properly because our network issues, so bear with us. Once I have Photoshop open, I can drag an image to the Photoshop icon in the dock and it should automatically open in Photoshop. I'm going to go ahead and hit OK on this. It's just telling me something about some 3D features, which I'm not going to use anyway. Now we took these in RAW, so it will automatically open it in this camera RAW format. You could do some adjustments here if you wanted to, if you decided that you needed more highlights or a little bit more contrast. You could do some of those adjustments here. But most of the cleanup is going to be done in Photoshop. So I'm going to hit done and it'll open in Photoshop. Or should I hit open? Oh, you know last time I did hit open. What was my problem today? Okay, we'll do this again. Okay, so I'm going to hit open image. Pardon me, I hit the wrong thing. Open image, don't hit done. Monday I told you I hit open image and was doing fine. Today I'm not on my game because I've gotten all shaken up because of this IT stuff. Okay, so here we are. We're going to need to clean this up. And the background is probably the biggest thing. This one I chose because it had a little bit darker background, so it would be easier to select. Now there's some really nice tools here in Photoshop. The old school way to do this was using the magic wand, but which is what I was sharing with Natalia. And Natalia, I'm sorry I was giving you old school stuff. New school is to use the quick selection tool, which is a lot nicer because you can select more than one kind of color. So we use the quick selection tool, and we selected by clicking and dragging areas that we needed to get rid of. So you can click and drag, and if it grabs areas that, if it gets a little crazy and grabs areas that you didn't want to have it get rid of, oops, like just now, then you can use the shift key to shift or option to add or delete things. So if I'm going really slow, it will it starts to think too much and it starts to take things away that I don't want it to take. Now I'm having problems with it today. It just does not want to act right. Now if you don't have to click it all at one time, I've clicked part of it, and if you hold down the shift key, you can click and add to that selection. Now this is kind of nice because if it starts grabbing things that you don't want to, you can hit Command Z or go to edit and step backward, and it will undo that bad selection. Like I just had a bad selection now, so I can go step backward or undo and it will not select those. So again, you can hold down the shift key to add more to your selection. I don't know why this is being such a pill. I just had such a good time with this on Monday when I wasn't recording, of course. Let's try this, make this bigger. I may use a combination of magic wand and that. So I'm switching. I'm going to go to the magic wand, and I'm going to hold down the shift key and select some more areas. See what the magic wand does is it is very selective in that it goes, oh, those pixels are a different color, much different color than the ones around it. So it will sometimes be a little bit more particular, the magic wand. Okay, so I've used both the, and I hold down the shift key again for choosing extra stuff. So when you saw me when you saw me choose this area here that hasn't been chosen yet, I held down the shift key and I clicked on it and it chose it. Now I'm going to go back to the quick selection tool, and we notice that it's eating away some of Jeffrey's worms. So to unselect or deselect, I hold down the Alt or Option key and I drag over the areas that I don't want it to select. Now to move around, when you're zoomed in, you hold down the space bar and a little hand will come up, and then you can click and drag with your mouse to move stuff. So that's a great way to, oops, I just took away. I wanted to hold down the Shift key and add, or the Alt key rather. There we go. I'm taking away from its original selection. I actually have the background selected, not the candy. I do want to grab this little black area, so I will hit the Shift key for that area. And I'm holding down Shift and clicking on it. Then I let off a Shift and I move around, and now I want to add to this, so I'm going to hit Shift. I want to get this little guy here. Hopefully it won't grab all of them. Again, this is something where I may have to switch between the magic wand and quick selection tool. So I'm holding down the Shift, and I'm grabbing that little area there. And that, I think there was an S or something back in there that he used as a guide. So you may have to toggle between quick selection tool and magic wand tool. Again, Alt will take away and Shift will add. This is having a real problem with that. Now if it's grabbing things that you don't want it to with the magic wand tool, you can set the tolerance, which is up in the center. Low tolerance means it definitely distinguishes between two colors of pixels much better than if it were high tolerance. So right now the tolerance is at 32. If I held down the Shift key again, because I want to grab this black area, and the tolerance is at 32, it did select most of that black, but it also grabbed a little bit of that worm that's back there, so I'm going to hit Command Z. If I want the tolerance to be lower, meaning I want it only to choose this black, again this is with the magic wand tool, which is hiding behind the quick selection tool, I set this tolerance to be lower. You've heard of things like low tolerance or no tolerance. Low tolerance means not acceptable of a lot of stuff. So the lower tolerance I go, let's say 10, then it will not accept as much stuff. So I'm going to hold down the Shift key. I'm going to grab these areas. Now sometimes I have to grab a couple times. Now it's leaving that worm alone. I'm going to hold down the Shift key and I'm going to grab this black area out here. You may have to click a couple times, especially with low tolerance, because it's really particular about the color of the pixels that you're selecting. So the cleanup does take a little while, depending on what you've got going on here. So I'm zoomed way, way in because I'm trying to choose pixels that you can't grab them when you're zoomed too far out. So you guys may have to zoom way in to grab pixels. Now to zoom out a little bit, I'm holding down Command and minus because I didn't want to zoom all the way out. And then again, I push down on the space bar to move around and get to the next area. So I will toggle again between the quick selection tool and the magic wand because the quick select, it works pretty well on most things, but its tolerance is pretty low and it starts to grab things I don't want it to. So that's where I might use the magic wand. Now again, I have an area where it's kind of bitten into one of these worms. So to deselect that, again, keeping in mind that the background is the thing selected. So I'm deselecting out of all this white stuff that's selected. I would hold down the Alt/Option key and click and grab that. Excuse me. So this takes a little bit of time to get used to and to do using either Shift key or the Alt or Option key to get rid of some of the things that you don't want. In here where it's really tight, I could set the quick selection tool at a smaller diameter. Okay, so I click on this quick selection tool, I go up to the control panel, and it was, you click on the little, it's the thing that's 5 items in. It's the size and hardness and spacing. So I can adjust the size of this, make it smaller, and perhaps then I can select things a little bit more carefully in these tight spaces. So depending on the size of the quick select tool, you may have a hard time grabbing details. So make it smaller so you can get in there and clean up some of the details. So I might not need the magic wand tool that much at all if I reduce the size of the quick select tool. Again, I'm hitting Command minus to move around. And you can kind of see how Jeffrey used some things as guides. So I'm going to go in there. He's printed out an S and used it as a guide, which is a pretty smart move. So I might go in here and I might add more selection for these black areas. Yeah, I like using this as a smaller tool because then I don't have to go and use the magic wand. So sometimes you have to make these small to use them. Again, I'm holding down the Shift key when I'm grabbing this extra stuff. So Shift to grab extra stuff, Alt to take it away, Alt or Option. Now, on a PC, it won't have Option on the key. It'll just say Alt. So it's kind of like learning how to play the piano. When do you hold down which key? So Alt to take away, Shift to add. Okay, so we're cleaning up the image, and we're going to change the background once we get this cleaned up. Now, if you get carried away, hold down the Alt key and try to add things back to it if you took something away that was not needing to be taken away. Okay, so I am going to pretend this is done. Now, I'm not quite finished selecting the entire background yet because I have, when I photographed this, I photographed it on a black piece of material, his board, so I need to grab that stuff too. Now with the quick selection tool selected, I will probably go ahead and increase the size of it so it'll be easier to grab.
Would cropping it be an option?
Oh yes, that's a good point. Why not just crop it? Well, because on Monday we were talking about how big of a space we need for the finished piece. But yes, we could crop it. That's a good point. Because it's a square thing anyway, but we're going to have to reduce the S down in size anyway. So yeah, we could crop it. It's a very good point. He's working smarter, not harder, folks. You're like, you don't need that stuff anyway. Why not just crop it? So I'll show you how to crop it here in just a second. I'm not going to make that other stuff white. Now, to drop this to white, well, the easiest way at this point, I did show you guys this. This is super, super easy. This is permanent damage. We could do this with an adjustment layer, which is better to use, but we can set what's called the white point. We notice that this white is not true white. Now, the cool thing about setting the white point is it can also affect what's in here. Sometimes that's not cool. Sometimes you don't want this to be messed with. Now, in this case, though, we might want to have this color adjusted along with the background, because I did pick a darker image just to demonstrate. If I'm going to do anything permanent damage to the pixels on this layer, I would have to unlock the layer. So this layer is the background layer. It means it's the original image, the original photo. If I unlock it, now I can do things to it. Now, I do want to share with you the right way to do stuff too. On Monday, I was just going, hey, just go to Image and go to Adjustments and go to Curves. Because I said, this is quick and dirty. This is the way we do it in the industry. When we're in a hurry, we know what we're doing. However, you can get that same thing through layers. And since I'm doing a recording, I'm going to be more mindful of it. Anything I put out on YouTube, I'm trying to be a little bit more careful about. But here is, at the bottom of this layer, you'll see, I call it the Oreo cookie dipped in milk or white chocolate. You know, have you ever seen white chocolate covered Oreos? This little symbol right here looks like an Oreo cookie dipped in white chocolate. It is an adjustment layer. It creates either a new fill or adjustment layer. So I'm going to actually click on that little Oreo cookie dipped in white chocolate, and we will see the word curves there. These are the same curves that we would be using had we gone up to Image, Adjustment, Curves. It's exactly the same thing, except for when I go to Image, Adjustment, Curves, that's permanent damage. If I wanted to actually be able to alter this later, I would want to use the little cookie, the little adjustment layer icon. So I would go to the adjustment layer icon and go to Curves. The window looks slightly different, but it is the same exact mechanism as going to Image, Adjustments, and Curves. Now to set the white point on this, now on Monday we had something that looked a little different. It wasn't even gray like this. So I'll show you what we had Monday. We went to Image, Adjustment, Curves, and it was a nice white window, and the 3 eyedroppers were underneath this histogram, or this little guy right here. So there's set black point or shadow, set midpoint, and set white point. So this is the same material, same exact stuff. It looks different, but if I'm on an adjustment layer, I go to Curves. They're in a different position. So that can be confusing if you're not used to that. So I click on the Set the White Point button. So there's a sample image to set the white point. It's the one with the white ink inside of the little eyedropper. And I can come out to the image and I can click. Oops, let me get the right tool for the job. I probably shouldn't have stuff selected, by the way. In fact, I just deselected. Actually, go to curves. There we go. Now, what's happening here? Let me deselect for just a second. Step backwards. Step backward. Step backward one more time. I just want to show you something. When I did the adjustment layer, let's get rid of Cmyk. Okay. When I did this adjustment layer, oh, Cmyk, get out of here. I'm recording. Cmyk. Okay, I want to step back because I got to explain this. When I had this selected and I did the adjustment layer and told it to go to curves, it created a little mask. You can see it in the layers panel. Okay, so it kind of created this little mask there. Now, because I went to curves twice, it created two of them. So it was having a hard time. Because I was going, oh, let me back up and show you this and do this again. Well, it has this one. Now I can set the white point on that. Now you will notice, though, it sets the white point only on the background. It does nothing to the color of the letter. Now in this case, this is really dark. So I'm like, oh, that looks really crappy, but the background looks really nice. Okay? And if you find areas where the white point is still not dropping to white, just click on them until it finally does. Now, you will find later on when you're working in Photoshop, masks are really important. Now, let's turn off that layer for just a second. We can use this little eyeball. This is our adjustment layer. And it goes, you can see that we didn't do any permanent damage to this particular image. Now, if you wanted to adjust this image without having the background selected, and you want to do the overall image, which in this case it needs it, because I chose a dark one, then you would start with your bottom layer, your background layer. Make sure you unlock it. Right now mine is unlocked. And then, because we don't have anything selected, this is not going to create a mask. We go to the little adjustment layer button, go to curves. Oops, I just grabbed levels, excuse me. Go to curves, get your white point. And now what will happen is when you click on anything that needs to be white, it will make an adjustment not only to the background but also to the object, okay? So sometimes you need to have separate objects adjusted from one another. In this case, we want them both. Now, if this gets too bright, you can select a different white point until you feel like, okay, the S looks pretty good. Now, if I turn on this other one, this other curve, the white point was set for the background on this other curve, and you will see when I click back on that now that I set the white point for the lower level, and this is a few different curves, but I set the white point for that background level or layer. That's here. And the levels didn't exist. And then the mask I created is also cleaned up. Okay, so that's there's like I said on Monday, there's like 12 different ways to skin a cat. So this is, there's easier and harder ways to do everything. And the thing with Photoshop, if you can cut out extra steps and you still can retain the original, then great. Now, what Don had mentioned, he says, hey, why don't you just crop that? Thank you, Don, that's a good idea. So the cropping tool, it looks like this little icon right here that I'm floating over. Back in the day when I was on yearbook staff in high school and early in graphic design, that's what a cropping tool looks like. You use this tool and you drew with wax pencil on a photo and you told the press people and the people who got everything ready for printing, it was the key liners, you told them, hey, crop the image here. And you use the cropping tool to draw these crop lines. So you guys don't have to do it anymore. But that's what that picture is about. Now to crop this, I just click and drag the corner icons to where they need to go. Then I hit the Enter or Return key, and there we go. Now, on Monday, we talked about the finished product being an 8" by 8" document. We're going to go into InDesign, and we're going to create 8" by 8" documents. We're going to add more typography to this. What's this word, Jeffrey, this represents?
Syrup.
Syrup?
Sugar.
Sugar? Slimy? We don't know yet. Yeah, we're still working it. But it's definitely an S word. So sugar, syrup.
Sugar or syrup.
Sugar or syrup. Okay.
Kind of the same thing.
Yeah, syrup though I think might.
Just different.
Yeah. Syrup I think might be confused with like pancakes. That's the only thing I think. I think sugar might be the better thing. Slimy would be cool too, because once they get wet, they get slimy or hot. Well, at any rate, let's get back to this.
Keep going.
I know, I'm recording. I digress. But this needs to fit within an 8" by 8" area, and so does the rest of the word. So we need to modify this in some way. Now, I made it easy on myself on Monday, and I created a new document, an 8" by 8" document. So I'm going to do that again today. I'm going to go to File, New, and I'm going to type 8" by 8". And what's our resolution? 300, because that's what's on the sheet. Now, you could go ahead and do a Cmyk color mode here, because you get the option. However, on Monday showed you how to do it a different way. So I'm going to do that again. So I hit OK, and I will have a second document. Now, I'm still in the crop tool, so I'll click on another tool and it'll go away. Now, what I can do here is I can copy and paste this into my new document. However, in order to get all of this material, I'll want to make sure that it's either flattened or that you get all the layers. Okay? Flattened means there's not all the adjustment layers are gone and they all come together and it's just one file. You'll also notice that when you flatten images, the amount of space it takes up goes down quite a bit. So I'm going to go ahead and save this before I flatten it. Here's how I do it in the real world. I save this as worm S layered. I do this all the time in the real world. And then I will go File, Save As, Worm S Flattened. Now the reason why I want to keep my layered one intact is because if I have to go back and edit some stuff. Now, I haven't flattened this yet, but I named it Flattened. And to flatten this so it's not so big, right now it's 20.9 megabytes with all the layers intact. You can see that down here below the image. And if I flatten this image, and there's a few ways to do this, but the easiest way is through layers. There's a little fly-off menu off to the side, and you just tell it to flatten the image. What will happen is now that 20 megabytes went down to 12.8 megabytes. It almost reduced it by half. So that's another reason to flatten your graphics is because they're huge. But always keep your layered version. So I flattened this. I'm going to select all of it, which is Command A or Control A, or if you're not familiar with that, go to Select and All. Command A, Control A, Select All, and all Adobe software. I'm going to copy it, which is Command C or Control C on a PC, or Edit Copy, however you want to look at it. I go to my new 8 by 8 document and I paste it. Now it may be if it's too big for the canvas, then we'll have to adjust it. Now this is too big for the canvas because I need room for the rest of the word. So now I'm going to resize this graphic, but not resize the canvas. So to resize the graphic, and I talked about this on Monday, but I use Image, Transform, or is that right? I'm sorry, Edit, Transform. I usually use the free transform because it has a keyboard shortcut. Anything with a keyboard shortcut, I'm all about it. So Command T is Transform, or on a PC it's Control T. Now if you wanted to be more careful and transform only by scaling, you could go down to Edit and Transform and choose Scale. But I just use the free transform. And I hold down the Shift key while I'm scaling. That way I don't squish and stretch this thing. You don't want to stretch your graphics out of proportion. I won't even let you. Okay, so you'll get these. It looks like what we got when we were cropping, slightly different. You always want to hold down the Shift key while you're transforming an object. Let off the mouse first after you transform it, and then let off the Shift key. Because what happens is if you let off the Shift key first, oops, do you see that? Here's Shift off, here's Shift on. If you let off Shift first, it will stretch it out of proportion. Shift is held down, that's proportional. Oops, I let off Shift and then let off the mouse. This stretched the graphic. So always when you're holding down Shift key and resizing stuff, let off the mouse first and then let off Shift. Okay, if I hit Enter, it'll stick. And now I can choose the Move tool and move it to a desired location. Now I don't know if this is too big or not yet because I don't know what the rest of my word is or how big those letters are. So I'm going to keep this particular file intact. I don't want to flatten it. And so I'm going to call this, I'll go to File, Save As. I still have some stuff to do to it. I'm going to call this S alone layered. And this tells me that the S is by itself and it's layered. All right. Now, I have not done what I need to do in regards to making sure this is Cmyk, which is in the assignment sheet. It has to be Cmyk. And I haven't saved it as a TIFF, which is the thing that we save them for printing. It's right now a JPEG, probably. No, it's a PSD. So we want to make sure that we save this as a TIFF and that it's also Cmyk. Now we'll do Cmyk first. To change an image from RGB to Cmyk, you would click on Image, and you would float over Mode, float your cursor over Mode, and then out in the flyout you choose Cmyk color. It'll ask you, do you want to flatten it? I would say don't on that. It'll give you a warning, hey, you're going to convert this. And you're like, okay, I'm fine. Now, you may have to do some color adjustments because oftentimes the yellows will go a little green, and so you may have to do some adjustment there. But that's converting to Cmyk. And then we'll go to File, and we'll save as a TIFF. So where it says Format, Photoshop, we're going to choose TIFF. By the way, did you guys hear that, was it, yeah, oh, yeah, I know, I'm taping. It was either Google or somebody else. They patented white background photography. That's according to a photo student. They told me, a photo student who has already graduated. Okay, so here I chose TIFF. Yes, I'm recording, thank you. I'm like, how do you patent something that's so ubiquitous? It's everywhere. But where it says Format, Photoshop, or JPEG, or whatever, you choose TIFF, and you hit Save. And this is okay, just hit OK. It's okay if it's IBM PC byte order, Macs don't mind. And it lets you know that increasing the layers will increase your file size. I'm okay with that. I might have to change that S to move it around a little bit. Okay, so that was dropping the highlights to white and then getting it ready for InDesign. Now, we also had things that had black backgrounds. Do you guys need me to go over that again? The black background stuff?